I'd probably, if I had to narrow it down to my favorite 2D, I'd probably say Bionic Commando, Castlevania 3, and River City Ransom are probably my top 3 favorite 2D games. Bionic Commando, the main thing I liked about it growing up was that it had a completely different control scheme than most 2D games, and you slowly got better and better at it. And when I go play it now, I'm a whiz at it, where I'm pulling off these crazy jumps and barely grappling on at the last minute, and grappling from underneath the floor and stuff like that. Castlevania 3, I liked the Castlevania series a lot growing up, and 3 probably ends up being my favorite due to there's so much variety with the control schemes for each different character. There's a character grant where you can crawl on the walls and crawl on the ceiling, and I could spend days playing that. And then River City Ransom, kind of for similar reasons, where you start off with a pretty limited skill set, and then you slowly build on that. And then I always played that co-op as a kid. It has a really a unique art style and a really unique sound to it. That's something I really liked. I really responded to when I was a kid. Well, this is the first game I've ever created. So anybody who plays it, they're gonna see there's some obvious similarities to like kind of old Nintendo games, primarily like Super Mario Brothers 2. So I tried to make things sort of organic and kind of trying to do things without breaking out a tutorial or kind of anything intrusive like that. So basically, there's sort of a mindset that I kind of went into with it. It was similar to like Super Mario Brothers, where I'm not gonna show a pop-up every time to explain jumping or to explain this. So you basically just have to slowly kind of ease the player into how to manipulate objects in the world, kind of through experimentation, but you kind of guide them as to how to do that with kind of just the level design itself, and you try to communicate stuff visually instead of trying to do it through some other medium. I guess the main thing to make a good game is to make it fun, and I think kind of coming to a place where how do you explain what's fun or whatever in a game, and I think a part of that, at least for me when I play a game, is sort of controlling a character and seeing his actions affect the world that he's in, and seeing making a believability to the world that your character's in, and being able to see if you hit a wall it breaks, or if you jump on something it makes a little smoke or something like that. That's kind of what I respond to, and what I think ends up making a good game is probably a lot tied towards that. I think as far as other games on the market, I think there's like a lot of platforming games out there. If you go to any like Flash portal, there's going to be a ton of them. Well, my opinion is that I think I did a pretty decent job of sort of balancing the puzzle elements of the game and the platforming elements of the game, and sort of the game I tried to hit the same mark as would be like a Donkey Kong 94. That's probably the last game I've played where I thought the platforming bits were good, and I thought the puzzle bits were good, and I thought that's what balanced it out. There's probably a lot of games on the market now that do the platforming part better, or that do the like puzzle elements better, but I think as far as hitting that balance between those two, I think I've done a good enough job that alone will set it apart. I started college as an art major, and I did that for about 2 years, and I kind of got to the point where I was like, well, I enjoyed doing this, but I don't think I'm going to be able to put food on the table as this. Like, I didn't think I was that talented, so I kind of went the other way and picked computer science. So I ended up being a computer science major, and that's what I graduated with. So that's actually helped me in both regards. I've done all the programming on my game so far, and the art in the game, which is kind of limited to kind of 8-bit sprites. I did all those in the game, well, except for the title screen. I didn't do that, but everything else I did. So, and then since I've gotten out of college, which is about 6 years ago, that entire time I've spent, I've been a Java programmer, so the game was written in C#, so switching gears to learn that and XNA really wasn't that big of a deal given my Java background. Yeah, I tended to start with the level, and then from there, if that necessitated any sort of new programming challenges, like new interactions with the enemy or new enemies or things like that, I'd go and program those with placeholder art, and then once that was in place, if I'd go and play it, and if the playtesting felt like this is good or this is worth investing the time in, I'd go and do new sprites and do the background art and all that. And I kind of went back and tried to think of sort of as games that I thought had a nice look to them and everything. And so Mario 2 was the obvious thing, but there's a lot of kind of religious art or art related to like mythology, and that sort of spurred a lot of the look of the game. With there's castles and there's gods in different rooms, and there's sort of a grandness to it. So even though it's sort of art 8-bit and it's sort of retro, I tried to go for sort of a grand style to it. There's a part in the game where you can use an ice enemy and you can freeze water. And originally when I wrote it, it was going to be that the water was going to be dynamic and it could flow and it could be stopped and all this other stuff. And I programmed that, and then I started working on getting the water to freeze. And it when I first thought of it, it seemed like it would be just really easy to do that. And I ended up spending more time writing and rewriting that piece of code than any other piece of code in the game. So I may not do the same thing in a later game. Freezing water may go out the window. The XNA peer review process ended up being something that I wasn't really ready for, because once you submit it, it's sort of completely out of your hands on how long or how short that ends up taking. So that part ended up being something that was sort of the lack of control in that aspect really kind of drove me crazy. Right now I'm working on 2 or 3 different prototypes for games. One is a Metroid style game. It's kind of like Metroid meets Borderlands, and it's going to be 2D. But I think I've got a rough prototype of it built, but I think I'm going to wait until kind of middle of the year to really dig in and start working on that. The other thing is that I've kind of keep coming back to this sort of this idea of doing a game where you're a guy in a tower and you basically have to slowly work through like 100 levels or whatever, and that's sort of inspired by a lot of games that I kind of have played before, sort of like Gauntlet or Tower of Jiraga, kind of games like that. So that's kind of what I'm working on now.